pointing at me, but I know it's not the time to start.
No, not yet. Oh, I was playing an imaginary keyboard.
Yeah, now it's time to start. This is Judgmentalist here with another episode of Big Sexy Digital Nomad. This week's episode is brought to you kind of like Sesame Street by the numbers 18, 25, and 73. We'll get into what that means in this episode because we are joined by a guest who has something in common currently and actively with both Big Sexy and myself. We've got Sarah Boyle on here, and of course, your host, Big Sexy.
Hello, what's up? Welcome to Big Sexy Digital Nomad. Hope you guys are having a great day. Things are going well. Happy morning. Good afternoon, good evening, whenever this is in your ear holes. I'm excited. Look, I get pumped anytime we have a guest, anytime we have somebody on that we get to chat to, and this this person has quickly become one of my favorite people that I have met recently. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Sarah Boyle is in the house.
Well, I'm in my house.
Yes.
In fabulous Las Vegas, where I am now the only one, right? Because
yeah,
you're out of here, man.
I'm not in the city anymore. I am no longer a Las Vegas resident. And matter of fact, I was talking to the wife yesterday. Yesterday being Sunday, as of we're recording, I met a friend for lunch. Shout out to Rossi Smith, who's a great friend of mine here in California. We met up at my favorite place, Mongolian Barbecue, in Highland. And from Riverside to Highland, you have to take the same freeway that I would normally take if we were driving home from my mom's house back to Riverside. And we were also making that drive at the time we normally would be making that drive if we came for the weekend. And it's very surreal for me.
Make sure you don't get on autopilot and just drive all.
I had to clock myself.
Yeah.
I had to clock myself and say, "Oh, wait a minute. I know I have to get off, and I know I'm going to barbecue because autopilot. My brain started to do the mental traveling back to Vegas. I'm not doing that. And then my wife let me know that she's beyond that. She's past that. She don't care no more.
She's already checked out.
She's already checked out. Yeah. But I still have that the thought process. The part of me goes, oh, maybe I'll we'll make it back in time to play some mahjong, catch up with the mahjong folks. And I don't know. I'm not going back. I'm just going to lunch right now. Had a great lunch, by the way. Again, shout out to my friend Rossi, who's currently in a musical now that is he's having fun with. Not my story to tell. Rossi, I'm going to make you listen to this podcast, and you're going to have to chime in with stories of your musical happenings. But in the meantime, we have a guest. Sarah, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Finally can be on a podcast and say I am currently employed, so I am not going on podcasts flogging,
Breaking news.
Yeah.
Do tell. What's the
part-time thing up in? I'm actually working up in North Las Vegas.
Okay.
Meeting every day, but it's half days, so not too bad. Just writing product documentation for IT equipment. Nothing super interesting, but it's in
So you're breaking the American mold, and you're doing the thing that you actually have education in.
Well, my degrees are not exactly in like technical writing, but close enough, right? I have an undergraduate degree in creative writing and a graduate degree in literature. So, like I said, close enough. The really funny thing is
at least it's in that path that you were looking for.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
It's really funny.
You were technical writing at the ice cream place, right?
I was a technical writer at the ice cream place.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was, yes. And I was really enjoying the work, like the actual documentation. I found it very interesting. And I actually was wanting to talk to Ryer about it next time he's around because a lot of the stuff that his company does is stuff that they do on site there. And I was writing a lot of safety documentation and stuff like that. So I thought that was really interesting. It's just my manager was awful.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
people don't leave jobs; they leave bosses. So
Right.
I
Well,
lasted 2 weeks on that one.
well, they lost somebody awesome. I'm just gonna put
Yeah,
that out
and
there.
they needed it. Like
Right.
they had put off hiring. One of the problems with technical writing is companies put off hiring someone until like the pile of work is just
So
obscene and
massive.
unmanageable, and then no one has time to sit down with the writer and get through that stack. And so a lot of times you end up as a technical writer kind of sitting around with nothing to do, and people start resenting you because they're like they just hired this person to do nothing.
Ugh.
And it's like, I need 20 minutes of your time and then I can work for 4 hours.
Right.
You don't have those 20 minutes to give me. You know,
Here I am.
I'll tell you, as somebody
Thumbs
who
when I
are
worked in
runs,
twirling.
proposal writing, I would always write it. I would always add in the technical writer at the beginning as part of the proposal. And my bosses would always be like, they're not going to hire someone at the beginning of the project. Like, there's no way. And I'm like, I can dream.
Right.
as somebody who runs a small business, I will tell you it's kind of a mixed bag for me. The effort is there and the mindset is there to know that I need to be ahead of things, and otherwise you end up, the description that I make of it is you're changing a tire while driving at speed down the highway.
Yeah.
And it is exactly what you just described, from that when you don't anticipate a need and then that need is there and the work is there and do I even have time to train somebody to do the work if you're bringing somebody in that's fresh and new? It's a struggle.
Yeah, definitely.
And
And it's like, in big environments, you could share a single person across multiple projects, right? Like, theoretically. But in practice, a lot of companies and a lot of customers, like federal customers, things like that, they don't want 4 hours here, 4 hours there for each project, because that makes the accounting confusing. They want a full-time person. But the size of a project that needs a full-time writer is massive, So it's just one of those funny things. I'm still making more working 4 hours a day than I did working for, a full 40-hour week as a college professor.
Nice. Wow. That's both sad and awesome.
I made more money working in a comic book store than I made as a college professor. So
again, also sad, but also awesome.
What's really funny is, in the technical writing environment, a lot of times they'll use the fact that I have a master's degree, like when they're bidding for something, and they just don't say what it's for. Like, they just say, "Oh yes, we have this many employees with advanced degrees."
Right.
But they don't.
Nobody needs to know. Nobody needs to know what it's for.
Yeah. Someday maybe there will be a technical writing project where I can use my knowledge of colonial era British literature, but it hasn't happened yet.
Well, you got to move to colonial era Britain.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you need to, or Pennsylvania, which I think is still.
I don't think I want to move back to,
You got to move back to the East Coast. Sorry.
There are definitely parts of Pennsylvania that feel colonial, but then again, there were parts of Virginia that felt the same way.
Yeah, I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, which is about 45 minutes from Colonial Williamsburg, which is, like, I think probably one of the best known colonial theme park type places, which is really funny because it's right next to Busch Gardens, and that Busch Gardens is like European themed. It's almost like Epcot, but it's all European countries. My mom actually worked as a caricature artist there when she was in college, and they had the big heavy wool outfits in Virginia in summer.
Interesting.
Yeah, they used to have wandering troubadours at Busch Gardens, but too many of them were passing out, and so they stopped doing it.
Wow. I have a friend of mine, her name is Jude Calora, who does colonial American reenactments. Different reenactments actually through time. She does a company called History at Play.
She owns lots of crotchless bloomers, is what you're telling me.
I'm sure, yeah. But it's amazing because she does her company's called History at Play. I'll be sure to tag her in this so she can see this, or they can see this. I'm not sure their pronouns.
You mean on social media, right? Because as far as the episode stuff is concerned, we don't ever coordinate on that.
Not once ever. Everyone wants to know. We
By episode 80, of course, we'll get
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we'll be perfect.
All together.
But you talking about that made me think of all the amazing stuff she does. She does also does a lot of Civil War reenactments, and she recently did Christy McAuliffe. For those who don't know, she was the teacher who died in the Challenger space shuttle explosion back in the 80s. But it's amazing, and so I don't know if she has anything that your degree would help, but you never know. I'll put you guys in the same space together and see if there's any kind of collaboration that could possibly help there. Now, you've been on quite a few podcasts, and I'm so glad you're on this one. This one, I don't know if you heard any episodes or listened to any episodes. Probably not.
Absolutely.
Do we need to do like a footwear check before we go too much further here?
No, I'm good. I'm not in my sandals and socks, which I actually was early. I was in my Nike sandals and socks. But you got to understand, it's cold here, and I had to wear sandals around the house. I was around the house. I wasn't out in public. I did not head to Target in my sandals and socks because I'm not Matt Donnelly.
Hey, now, like, if you give him shit and it gets back to him, he's gonna lay it on me again.
Especially because you're a guest on the podcast.
We'll let you know when he listens to this episode. All right?
Yeah. We'll let you know.
I made no judgment when I posted the picture of him in sandals and socks. All I posted was things Twitch won't show you. I didn't say, look at this bullshit. I didn't say, like,
no judgment. No judgment.
Like, I didn't make any commentary. Yeah. I also didn't even identify who it was in the original. Like, I didn't say, oh, yeah, this is Matt. I mean, everybody knows it wasn't Jacob, but...
and Matt's not here, and Paul's not here, so...
Right, Paul's not here.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything at the time because we mixed up our times, and I showed up halfway through the recording, and the door to the building that the churn is in was locked. And I'm texting Matt, and he's like, oh, well, we're in the middle of recording now. You can still make it. And I'm like, Matt, I'm not saying we screwed up our times and I need to head in. I'm here.
Right.
I'm here. Let me in.
Yeah, little BTS. I was, when my last appearance on the episode, my third goodbye podcast.
You're like the Eagles.
Right.
You're going to have a few farewell tours.
A few. And I'm having one more anyway.
You had to drop off that cursed ring.
I texted Matt, like, hey, are you with the churn? He said, yeah. I was like, cool. I want to swing by. I have a gift for you, whatever. And I brought him the ring. And I get there. He's like, yeah, cool. Come on by. We're recording. Perfect. Great. I'll swing by, whatever. I get there and it's locked. So now I'm texting, like, hey, I'm here. Anything? I lightly knock because I know they're recording. So I lightly knock. Yeah. I don't want to, disrupt the recording, whatever. Nothing. I'm like, it's cold out here. It's cold and it's windy.
Yeah, he's left me out there in the cold and in the heat.
Yeah. So I'm like, you know what? And then finally, he came in and messaged or whatever. I get they had paused or they were in between or whatever, and came in, let me in, and so when I heard that he did that to you, I'm this is just a thing. This is just what Matt does.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless you're an actual guest.
Right. Yeah. Unless you're a guest.
Maybe someday I will do something where they will actually want to invite me on the show to promote something, but it hasn't happened yet.
No, I think that's the thing with Scoops, right? We're in that position.
Yeah. What I really want to do, and I have made no progress towards actually doing it, but what I really want to do is make an album of lo-fi hip hop beats to study by, where all the sounds are produced by food. And I figured out how I would do it. I just haven't sat down and done it. But like the thump when you tap on the bottom of a loaf of really good crusty bread.
Right. What would the name be?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. Ooh. See, that's the reason I can't do it is because I haven't come up with the.
Let's put the brain power to work.
When everybody else was doing their first sourdough stuff with the pandemic, being a trendsetter, I had actually started a sourdough starter 6 months previous. And so I was going around delivering little jars of starter to my friends' houses, no contact delivery. But one of the satisfying things about baking bread is, the sounds that it makes. Like, say,
Right.
thump on it, or you go to slice into it and you get that really good like crunch sound when you break the. And then I was like, this would be an amazing like
Food for
feature.
thought.
And I could totally cover Blue Monday just with
Foods
bread.
for thought.
Like, yeah, you go
Food
foods.
sounds for thought.
They're like pet sounds, but food sounds.
Yeah.
It'll be my one really introspective album, and then everything else I do will just be a parody of pop.
Right.
And if we don't say the name of the band, how many people will not understand what we just said, right?
Right. That part, yeah.
But you get that
Just put that out. That'll be
subliminal,
the special.
those subliminal sounds in there. You'll end up, you make that work. You're going to end up finding yourself getting licensed by restaurants to play it in the background to make people
Maybe.
hungrier,
Mm-hmm.
or grocery stores, maybe.
Yeah.
And just making people hungry.
Well, it's funny. You're part of the Las Vegas Henderson Mahjong Butt Touching Society.
Yes.
We had talked about doing and may still do an ASMR channel.
Right.
Where we're going to call Only Hands. And it's just going to be the shuffling of mahjong tiles, right? Because that sound is kind of soothing. If you can make it really soothing.
Yeah, the slide on the felt,
the
and
slide
the
on
clicking,
the clicking, yeah. Can we record all the hands doing it and all that kind of stuff? So yeah, and we're gonna.
I'm up for that. It's the remembering how to play mahjong every time that.
I'll tell you, keep going back. It'll lock in.
I'm like, oh, can I take that tile? Wait, no, I can't take that tile.
I mean,
Damn it.
To be fair, folks have been playing since January of last year and November of last year, and they're still asking those kind of same questions. Like, oh wait, who can I take from again? Can I?
Yeah, I think. And I have no concept of the scoring at all. Like,
no.
I haven't even tried with that. So
yeah, I pick up on that kind of stuff fast. I just see Joe, but you gotta come out and we gotta teach you some mahjong, so you can.
Well, I'll be out there end of March, early April.
Yeah, same here.
And that's a recreational trip.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to get together and do some stuff. But speaking of which, Sarah, you have experienced travel a lot in your life, and this is a travel podcast.
Indeed.
And so I would love to hear tales and stories of your traveling experiences, things that, travel hacks that you learned along the way, stories. I've heard several of your travel stories before, like your trip from Virginia to Vegas and how exciting that was.
Mostly for my husband, but yeah.
Right.
No, we drove from Virginia to Vegas, which is about 2,500 miles. And in Oklahoma, the van that my husband was driving broke down. The alternator died. I left. He was like, don't stick around and wait for me. I had the cats in the car with me and everything. And he was just like, push on.
Now, do you guys have two cars? Is that
at the time? So we actually bought a van for the purpose of the move, because it was so expensive to rent something.
Right.
And we were just like, for what we'd be paying to rent a van, we could buy one. And the majority of our stuff was on a big moving truck. We decided this time we weren't going to try and do it ourselves. And even though we got rid of a lot of stuff in the move because we were downsizing, we brought a lot of stuff.
Well, you still were where you were for what? 13, 15 years?
Yeah, the house that we were living in Virginia, in the good old Manass in Manassas, Virginia. You want to talk about Civil War reenactment?
Some of those people are still living, not reenacting.
Oh, that's true. Like I said, I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, which is the capital of the Confederacy, and definitely some people that still think that's ongoing. Yeah, they recently dug up one of the generals because they were moving the statue that he was buried under, and a couple hundred people showed up in like 1860s mourning garb to like rebury him. It was a whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so we have our Chevy Volt, which is it's a plug-in hybrid. So when it would get through the charge, we could put gas in it, and then we bought a Dodge Ram cargo minivan for the things that we didn't want to put on the big moving truck.
Right.
And I think Steve paid like $5,000 for it and then put a couple grand in repairs into it. And then in the middle of Oklahoma, the alternator just crapped out on us.
I think that was a part of the story that I missed, was the 2-car part, because I remember you saying, the alternator crapped out, especially when my alternator recently crapped out. We brought up this tale, right?
It's fun, isn't it? When you're driving a car and the alternator dies.
And all of a sudden,
back in high school with my first car too, and everything just goes.
Yeah,
and you're like, what is happening?
All your lights come on. Like, why are these lights? Why are all these lights coming on? Slow.
Yeah. If you have the radio on, the radio goes like meow, or like actually makes like a weird.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
It was entertaining.
And we managed to get the van off the highway, but the exit we got off on, there were 2 gas stations there, and they were both permanently closed.
Oh.
And there was just nothing. And like I went ahead to see if there's anything at the next exit, and there wasn't, and I turned around and went back. Wow. Fortunately, we have really good car insurance, and they sent out roadside to tow him. But it was starting to look like they weren't going to be able to fix it for a while, because we were in one of those, the joke from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Isn't this town just a geographical oddity? 2 weeks from everywhere. All the shops were just little local shops, and they were all booked up, and they couldn't get in like an emergency. And finally, Steve managed to find another shop that could accommodate him. And the guy, got his son in the truck, and they went out to another town to pick up the alternator and the whole thing. They really took care of him. But when it was starting to look like the van wasn't going to be fixed anytime soon, Steve was just like, you should go. We were planning to make it to Albuquerque that night, and he was like, just go. Just go ahead, leave me. I've just got stuff with me. Right. Because, juggling the cats and everything. It's hot. It's July.
Oof.
So I pushed on to Albuquerque, got a delightful room in the La Quinta in Albuquerque. Not one of the best La Quintas I've ever been in. Got the cats settled in. They actually did really well in the hotel rooms. I was kind of surprised because our cats are like super skittish and weird.
Oh, nice.
But Steve actually managed to catch up to me. He was only 4 hours behind me.
Well, that's not
so
bad.
He got in around midnight.
Oh, wow, that's really good.
Some sleep, and yeah, it worked out. But it was dicey.
Now, you've done quite a bit of international travel, right?
Some. The majority of my international travel has been on the cruises that I've gone on. But we have also taken trips to the UK and to Iceland separately.
Now, the good news is all three of us have now officially cruised.
And we all have a cruise booked, which is that's the tease with the 3 numbers. As of the date of the episode airing, my next cruise leaves in 18 days. Sarah's in 25, and the big one for Big Sexy is in 73 days. That is
it's 73?
Well, as of Wednesday, yes.
Oh, okay. But still, that's 75 as of recording. It doesn't feel that short. It feels like 79.
Yeah, it gets a little like, depending on how big you're planning on going with some of your packing and things. Sometimes the cruise I'm going on has a tradition of people wearing tiaras to the formal night, and I had not participated in previous years, but this year I decided I was getting a tiara, and I ordered one, and it's not here yet. And I'm like, I ordered it a while ago, and so I'm kind of, I'm like, man, I was going to do that.
Just be aware, you live in Las Vegas.
I do now live in Las Vegas.
You can get tiaras in throwing distance.
I know, but it was a very particular. It's part of a set. It had an aesthetic I really liked.
Okay.
I don't wear jewelry, and so on the rare occasions that I do, I'm very particular about it.
Gotcha. In that instance, I get it. But yeah, there are so many places.
I know. The gift shop at the Excalibur is known for having tiaras.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Any gift shop.
So yeah. So living in Vegas, what port are you sailing out of?
So we're actually flying to Fort Lauderdale for this.
Okay.
This cruise has in the past departed from San Diego for a couple of years, and I really enjoyed the Baja California cruises The Caribbean is lovely, but I liked Baja California more. Although the Pacific is fucking freezing
All the
in
time.
February and March, especially. Yeah, one year I was like, I am absolutely going in the ocean, and we were in a town called Loreto, gorgeous little town in Mexico. I highly recommend it. They have like an old mission church and everything, and there's a Mexican national park there that has beautiful shoreline. And I was like, I am going in the ocean, and I went to like upper thigh height,
It was like,
and
no.
I was like, that next step of going a little deeper, when the ocean touches your junk is when you really.
Yeah. That's
I, I
is the water warm enough for my crotch?
Yes. And so I turned around and I marched right back out. But I was like, I
Yeah.
went in the ocean. So
And that's it, right? Oh, foot's in the water. I'm in the
yeah.
ocean.
Well, and as someone who grew up on the East Coast, spending a lot of time in the ocean on the Atlantic side, the first time I encountered the Pacific Ocean as a child was I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, and my mom grew up in Solana Beach, which is near San Diego, and so she
Right.
knew. Like she
Very
grew up
nice area.
surfing after school and stuff. And she and my dad decided not to warn us. And I
The
remember
cruelty of
just being like
parents.
Smart.
so betrayed as a kid, being like, "How could you not tell me that this water is fucking frigid?"
Because all you see is water, and you're a kid, you're just running top
Oh
speed.
yeah. Well,
Woohoo!
and like in the parts of the East Coast where I grew up going to the beach, like North Carolina and the Outer Banks area, the water stays warm pretty late in the year. And so like it'll be cold outside, but the water will actually be pretty comfortable in October.
Right.
And so as a kid, you'd run to the water because it was warmer than the air.
Right.
So very much the opposite.
and because you're running top speed, you are not in control to be able to
Oh
stop.
yeah. Oh yeah.
You're committed. You're committed, and you're in, and then you're cold, and then you're trying to figure out, oh my God, how do I get out? I got to get out.
Yeah. I did become really fascinated as a kid with the beach rocks on the Pacific. They're kind of like river stones almost. They get very
Right.
flat and very smooth. And that is not something you see on Atlantic beaches at all. So, yeah, it's sort of funny. You don't think about it, I think, a whole lot. As Americans, we don't think about how different our country is in various places. It's a big fucking country. Like
Big fucking country.
yeah, and so some of the cultural things moving from Virginia to Vegas surprised me. And then, of course, the biomes, basically.
Right.
I lived almost my entire life in a part of Virginia that's called the Piedmont, which is a very specific ecosystem. And most of the things that, I've had around me my whole life and taken for granted just aren't here.
Aren't here at all. At all. You're now in a desert. Welcome to the desert.
Yeah. I have
say welcome.
Halloween pumpkins still sitting on my porch. I never carved them, and they haven't rotted. And I'm like, what? Like,
yeah.
In Virginia, something will eat them. And here in Vegas, there are critters that will eat things like that. But just I'm a little bit too into the city to have a lot of that.
Where you're located, you're in.
I'm in Southwest in Spring
a
Valley,
suburban area.
Yeah, in a pretty dense neighborhood. My yard is the size of a postage stamp, and I'm okay with that. After maintaining a lawn and everything for all those years, I'm happy with my little concrete backyard.
Yeah, I'm having to deal with that being back in California, because just from California to Vegas, it's different. It's greener out here. There's yards. My mom's house is big.
Do they have basements in California?
No, not.
That was one of the biggest things. Is living on the East Coast, everybody's got a basement.
Right.
But,
yeah. No.
Yeah, not so much out here.
The ground quakes out here, and the basements would get crushed. Also, there's other things that people with different degrees than I have can explain why.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, they don't happen often, but Virginia does get earthquakes, and I've experienced a couple of somewhat significant earthquakes in my time out there. But actually, the biggest earthquake I ever experienced in person was when I was working in Kuwait. There was a major earthquake in Iran, and we could feel it in Kuwait. And I was up on the 7th floor of our apartment building, and the building codes out there are
Right.
suggestions.
Not
And
so much codes as they are recommendations.
yeah, and we had a large but very cheap flat screen TV, and I remember watching it just go wow, 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 like just and kind of thinking like, is this how I die?
Now, how did you end up in Kuwait? Where did you go to Kuwait from?
So when we were living in the Northern Virginia, DC area, my husband was working for a company that had a bunch of international contracts, and he was really angling for Germany. That one didn't work out, and they were like, well, we've got this other contract in Kuwait. It's 10 months. We could really use you on this. And he was like, at the time he'd been traveling for work like a month at a time, and he hated it. He hated being away from home. And I was like, well, the Kuwait contract sounds lucrative, for sure. And we had been talking about like remodeling our kitchen and, things like that. And we were like, money's good. We like money. It's like an idiocracy. You like money too? We should hang out. I was like, well, I was between jobs at the time. And I was like, do they need a technical writer? We could both go do this. And he was like, I'll ask. And they did. So they hired both of us.
Sweet.
Yeah. It was a really interesting experience. It's a 10-hour flight from DC to Kuwait City. On the way out, I had caught a cold on the first Joko cruise that we went on in 2013. And I was getting better until I got on an airplane for 10 hours. And I could feel it turning into like a sinus infection. And by the time we got off the plane, I was completely deaf in one ear. And I had, this is content warning, I had green mucus coming out of my tear ducts. Because there was so much pressure in my head that it wasn't just ear, nose. It was actually coming out of my eyes.
Oh, wow.
So that was exciting.
That sounds grody.
And we couldn't find a doctor who would treat me.
You're crying snot.
Because as a AFAB person, there's some stuff with that in Kuwait. They're not a hugely conservative Muslim country, but they are a very Muslim country. So finding a doctor who would treat me and who spoke English was a problem. Ooh. But it turns out you can just go to the drugstore in Kuwait and get a Z-Pack over the counter. So that's what we did.
How was your time in Kuwait? Did you?
The job ended up being bad, but Kuwait was fascinating. I wouldn't necessarily recommend anyone go there for tourist reasons. But there was a lot of fun stuff to do while we were there. We, drove out into the middle of the desert, half a tank of gas, and then turned around and came back a few times. That was interesting. Just saw a lot of stuff. They have an amazing aquarium there. And it has, like a little mini zoo inside that's all like native mammals.
Oh, interesting.
So that was a lot of fun.
When you hear Kuwait, you wouldn't think aquarium. Those two don't.
No, not at all.
Match up in
but it's
brain.
A lot of the. I mean, it's on the Gulf, and it actually, of all of the Middle Eastern countries, Kuwait used to have the biggest like fishing culture, and they used to eat a lot of seafood in their diet and everything. Nowadays, you don't want to eat anything out of the Gulf because it's heavily contaminated with petroleum and human waste.
Right.
Which
yay humans!
Our apartment was across the street from the beach, and it was a gorgeous beach, but we never went in the water.
Right.
And we would watch families like with their kids out there, and it was just like, oh god,
stop going in the water.
The other funny thing is when the tide is in, the beach there is really stunning and looks really nice. But when the tide goes out, it's all rocks.
Right.
And it looks very jagged and scary. And so the idea of wading in it, even if the water was perfectly clean, was a little bit.
Right. So, that's what I'm actually stepping on if I decide to go out during high tide.
But it was really cool because they have a lot of like tidal pools because the nature of and again, this is one of those people with degrees other than mine. The geology there, the rocks, the way they erode creates these little tidal pools. And so there'd be like crabs and fish like trapped.
Really cool. Really cool. Sea life.
And Kuwait has a huge problem with feral cats. Like they're just everywhere there. and you'd see the little mama cats take their babies down to the beach at low tide to like teach them to fish in the tidal pools. It
Oh
was really
wow.
cute. We almost ended up bringing home a couple of like feral Kuwaiti kittens because my husband fell in love.
Ooh,
Our
what would
our
that
two
process
current
have been?
cats would not have been happy about that because we had them at the time and they would not have been pleased.
And I can't imagine the Kuwaiti feral cats would have been pleased either.
Well, they were young, you know. Ferals can sometimes be tamed down, but no, they were born in the courtyard of our apartment building, and Steve was feeding them like lunch meat from the military base and stuff. And I'm like, "What do you do?" You know, he would give them ham, which is illegal in Kuwait. Like pork products are illegal in the country. You could buy them on the army base.
I would
if
say,
you had
where did he get the ham? Oh,
yeah, no.
from the
So we
military
had
base,
access
right?
to the army base as part of our jobs, and we had a base exchange there, and so we would buy ribs and stuff. And the whole time I'm just like, oh my, like I don't want to get deported over barbecue.
Over lunch meat.
Yeah.
And you absolutely could, like, you could actually absolutely lose your
Right,
visa and
right.
get deported, and potentially spend some time in jail in Kuwait.
Barbecue deportation.
Yeah, over grilling. Like, why are we doing this?
That was the name of the last band I was in.
Barbecue deportation.
You see it now, you know, the presidential prison exchange for these two folks that got arrested over a fucking sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there'd be somebody who
We
would
had
be
to give up
super into it.
a Kuwaiti war criminal because
They'd be super, super into getting us out for that. Because this is probably too long a story for the podcast, but I used to work for the NRA. And we had people who would talk about like dipping bullets in pork fat because, you know, it would send Muslims to hell or whatever. And so like there would be somebody who would take up the defense of the people who made the ham sandwich. Like,
absolutely.
Ham sandwiches for freedom or, you know, whatever. We were also brewing our own alcohol in our apartment, which is also very illegal.
I love that you guys are just Kuwaiti criminals.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I'm covered in tattoos, which are not illegal in Kuwait, but very frowned on. And
Very
so
frowned on.
I stayed very
to all our Kuwaiti listeners, you can. I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations has passed, so you can give Sarah.
I mean, it's only a problem if I go back, probably.
Right.
So.
Right. And
I'm a little sad. I have a new passport and it's completely empty because my old passport has my Kuwaiti work visa pasted into it, and a TSA agents and people are always fascinated by it because they don't see a lot of them. But it has my name horribly, horribly misspelled because they translated all the letters into Arabic and then back.
Oh no! Oh no!
It reminds me of one of my favorite seasonal memes, and we are approaching the season for this, and it is. And I'm sure you'll see it float around. You'll probably see me post it in the next couple of months, but it's one that usually drops around Good Friday, and it's like a cross-stitched cat, and it's, you know, again, it usually drops on Good Friday, and it's got cross-stitch in there. Jesus is dead for 3 days. Let's go do crimes. And
I bought myself a t-shirt that says "Be gay, do crimes, go to the general to save some time."
That's hilarious.
Awesome. Yeah, we ended up coming back early from that trip due to some of the stuff with the job. So we only spent 6 months in Kuwait. It was a learning experience, and it's why I decided to move to Vegas actually in the long run, because I had spent a lot of time out in the desert as a kid. My mother was born in Alamogordo, New Mexico, outside of White Sands. She used to joke that's why she glowed in the dark. My mother's very pale. And because her father was an engineer, a mechanical and electrical engineer working in the aerospace industry at the time.
Oh, wow.
You know, when they were blowing stuff up at the missile range and things.
Yeah. All that fun stuff.
And then my dad has always just been very interested in the Southwest. And so we actually spent more time out here than on the East Coast for a lot of vacations. Like there's parts of the Mid-Atlantic that I've never been to the colonial era stuff in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. Ugh, I'm getting all my, you know, a lot of people go to Philadelphia and see like the Liberty Bell and stuff like that. No, I came out here and went to like Bandelier National Park and I've seen pretty much every major hole in the ground in the Southwest.
Nice.
Um, and so, I had that experience with the desert. And then Kuwait, even though we were right on the Gulf, it's a desert. Like there were days when it was 7% humidity out there, and my skin and hair have never been better. I sweat a lot. I sweat like a whore in church. And living in a place like Manassas, Virginia, where in the summertime it's often 87%
You're just
humidity,
damp all the time.
just sticky. You get out of the shower and you're already sweating.
Yeah.
And I was done with it. So
Yeah,
we
not
made a
so much
list
out
of
here.
desert cities, and we
Out on the
said,
west side, you'll stay dry.
"Oh yeah." We made a list of desert cities, and we said, "Okay, Phoenix is out. Phoenix sucks. Sorry, Phoenix. I love everyone who lives there, but your city's awful."
Agreed.
And we were like, "Well, there's like Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and those are all really nice, but the airports there are just nothing. You walk across the tarmac at those airports." And we want to do more travel in the future, and so Vegas ended up being
Vegas is perfect.
process of elimination. And we know people here. And my dad used to bring me out here a lot as a kid. It's a good jumping off point for other stuff on this side of the country. It's an easy drive out to California. There's a lot of stuff within a driving radius of this city.
Right. And that's some really cool shit to see within driving radius, from
I want to
Vegas.
go to Bryce Canyon in Utah, because I went to Zion, which is close to it, but Zion is close enough that you can drive from Vegas to Zion, see Zion somewhat, and then drive back in a day. Bryce is a little bit too far.
Yeah, you're going to have to stay over in Utah.
Yeah, my dad didn't want to overnight in Utah for whatever reason. So well, we had to get back to Vegas in time for a show. And I can't remember. I think we were seeing one of the Cirque shows. My dad has taken me. I've seen a lot of magic in Vegas. I've been very fortunate with that. Actually, I got to see Caesar's Magical Empire when it was open.
Oh, nice.
One of the trips with my dad, I saw Penn and Teller, Amazing Jonathan. Oh God, I'm gonna forget his name. Godot worked for him.
Lance Burton.
Lance Burton. I got to see Lance Burton.
Yeah, our resident magician should know who all these people are. It's funny. He's a magician. I'm the Las Vegan.
And Lance Burton had his joke about the pigeon crapping on him. This is why I don't work with tigers. This was before the tiger incident.
Right.
But yeah, no, I've gotten to see a lot of really cool stuff here. And of course, now that I live here, we don't go to any of that stuff. Like we haven't gone to any of the big shows like down on the Strip.
That's hilarious. I was the same way. Like when I moved from California, I thought, oh man, I'm finally going to see all the things, see all the shows. I'll be living there. I'll get locals discounts.
Yeah.
I hardly saw anything. If a friend wasn't in it and couldn't give me friends and family discounts.
When I was spending a lot of time in Vegas back in the late 90s, parking was free everywhere.
Everywhere.
And now it's like, great, I got to pay like half the price of my show ticket just to park my car.
Yeah. The part of the travel hack and
you guys don't have the Vegas parking and weather drop from ICS.
We don't. No, Vegas parking and weather. No one does it better than ICS, but we're second best. Whatever. I don't know. That'll go. So there are you learn which casinos you can park for free at.
Yeah.
Right.
And the list is getting shorter and shorter.
It is. So if you're going to anything on the east side of the Strip, what you do is you park at the Tropicana, you cross over to MGM Grand and take the monorail. And then
I've never been on the monorail.
It's good for what it was. It was fun when I didn't live in Vegas. Right. It was great to travel, but it's just the east side of the Strip.
We would joke about it because when I was coming out here with my dad, Star Trek: The Experience was still open,
right,
and the Hilton was on the monorail line.
Do we know anybody who worked there?
No, not at all.
Not
Somewhere,
anymore.
I believe there is a photograph of me with Paul from that, and I would need to track it down. I think my dad has it like in a big box of photos from those days. But I definitely have a picture of myself and my sister standing in front of the torpedo from The Search for Spock.
I'm pretty sure I have somewhere, and I have a big box of photographs, and I'm pretty sure somewhere in there might be a picture of Paul, because I was the one behind
Yeah.
the camera just snapping
If I
pictures of
find
all the
it,
things I
it's
thought
gonna
was
make Paul
cool.
feel really old because I was like 16.
Right.
Um,
But yeah, so that's park at the Tropicana. Parking's free. Walk to MGM, take the monorail. If you have to be on the west side, now that's a little more tricky because all that free parking has, I think, gone away. That's anywhere doable.
well,
That
when
makes
we went
sense.
down to New York to meet up with you two, when Jobeth was in town recently, we didn't realize there was a concert going on, a Post Malone show at the T-Mobile Arena,
Right.
and so
See, that's the
everything
thing
close
in that
by.
area now. Like
Yeah,
at that end, that side, you've got the not only concerts and stuff that they're doing at the T-Mobile Arena, but you've got hockey games. You're not far from the
sporting
football
events. Yeah,
stadium. You've got what is it called? It's at Park MGM, Dolby Live. So there's like
yeah.
almost always some shit going on right there, which will make
Yeah.
the parking high and
High
the
and
traffic
stupid.
really crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, when you guys told me you guys you ended up paying for parking, I was like, oh no, I didn't know. We shouldn't.
Whatever,
Oh.
it was fine. I took
Thank
Steve.
you again, by the way, for coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh,
appreciate it.
whenever we can, No, it was actually really funny. Steve had never been to the conservatory at the Bellagio,
Oh,
and since we
nice.
were over there, I was like, "Why don't we go see the conservatory?"
It's lovely.
Yeah, sometimes they're more hit and miss than they used to be. The displays used to be just really stunning, and
I think the Bellagio still has free parking.
maybe I don't know. We ended up I can't even tell you where we ended up parking last time. Gosh,
Somebody check
it
this
was
out.
too long ago. My brain is just
yeah,
gone.
I think Bellagio
We
still
were
has
very
free
happy.
parking.
We went to a show at the Smith Center and parking was $6, and I was like, "This is amazing!" And we could charge your car. It was free charging for our EV, so it worked
That's
out.
a beautiful
But
lot. Now, where has been your favorite spot to have traveled to?
The
You have
UK
one.
was fabulous. London was amazing. I would probably move there if it weren't financially just a ridiculous idea.
Yeah, London's expensive.
We loved London. And then we have some friends who live in Leeds, who we visited for like a week a few years back. And Leeds was really delightful. It's definitely across the divide of North and South in England. I think Americans don't realize that there is a North-South thing in most countries.
Nope.
They're different. It's not the same conflict, but the accents are completely different, things like that. And they definitely have opinions about each other.
Right.
But yeah, no, everything about the UK was delightful. And my friends in the UK will complain about like their mass transit and things like that, but that's compared to continental Europe.
Right.
Compared to here, like
it's a godsend.
We flew into London Heathrow and took a train to Cardiff and spent a couple days in Cardiff, and then took a train to Leeds and then back to London to fly home. And it was the nicest train experience of my life. It was not it was actually, the really funny thing was at Heathrow we board this brand new train, gorgeous, high speed, super modern, sleek train. It's got electrical outlets at every seat, and it's got Wi-Fi and all that. And we get a little ways out and we change trains. And the train is a little older and a little less fancy, and just a little less. And then we change trains again, and it's a little less and a little less. And we finally get to Cardiff, and we get to the main station, and we're like, well, we could walk to our hotel from here, but there's one more stop that's a little closer, and our tickets would cover it, so it won't cost us any extra. Let's do it. And we board this single car
Get out in the middle with just a hand cart,
trolley,
pushing it up
almost,
and down.
yeah, like the old thing with the guys pumping. There's no AC, the windows are open. Everyone around us is speaking Welsh. Like there are no one is speaking English in this train car.
Right.
And so it was just really fascinating to follow the whole progression downward of and yet that last little car was still cleaner and nicer than any Amtrak train I've ever been on. So.
Right.
And I spent a lot of years riding the DC Metro, which is our subway system in DC. And it is one of the cleanest in the United States. And it is definitely not as clean as the shittiest train I saw in the UK.
Right,
So.
which is sad because the BART up in the Bay Area also claims that be very clean, very nice. It wasn't always that way, but I've been on it recently, and I see the upgrades. I'm looking forward. Wife has started looking at the trains going from Barcelona back to Lisbon.
Barcelona,
which is where we're going to port. And she's been looking at the train rides from there. Also giving me the prices. She's like, "Oh, you can, a train ride is going to cost this much." I'm all, "Wait, what?"
And a lot of those
that in pocket change.
You have like on-off privileges, right? Like that was one of the things we liked in the UK was we got hungry and we were like, why don't we hop off here and eat at this station and just catch the next one?
Yeah.
And our ticket covered that, and so it was like, why not?
I'm really looking forward to that.
I still have my Oyster card from the London Underground.
Now, the cruise you're taking in, was it 25 days?
Something like that.
Is that the Joko cruise?
Oh, God, that's terrifying. Yep, that'll be the Jonathan Colton Joko cruise. Yeah.
For those who don't know, for listeners, if you're unaware, Jonathan Colton, a great entertainer, does a cruise every year. How many of those have you been on?
So this is the 12th year for the 12th sailing for the cruise. They missed, time for the pandemic
COVID,
and everything.
Right.
I went on 2013, 2014. I think I skipped 2015. Steve has been on one more of the Joko cruises than I have, because I chose not to go with him one year. Because after a few years of busting his butt as an amateur photographer on the cruise, they decided to hire him as the official event photographer for the cruise.
Nice.
So he has gone without me. Actually, he's gone without me twice now. So I've missed 2, but I've been on, I think 5 of them, something like that.
I have wanted to go on every single one.
Yeah. It's a thing. It's the only type of cruise I've ever been on. I've never been on like a normies cruise. Joko used to share the ship with, they refer to other people as snorks. Non-Joko cruisers were referred to as snorks. And so the first couple of years I went on the cruise, it was a shared sailing.
A hybrid, right.
But it's now a large enough group that they're able to book a full charter of one of the smaller Holland America ships, which unfortunately is part of why we won't be going back to the West Coast soon, because we're a little bit too small of a group for the ships that sail on the West Coast.
Right.
So we either have to grow the group or, go back to shared sailings.
Yeah.
There's definitely advantages and disadvantages to both. When we were a smaller group, everyone could fit in the ship's main auditorium at the same time. So there'd be one show. And now they do 2 shows, the red team and the gold team. And sometimes they're a little different, because things happen in the moment and all that. They try to give you, equal shows, but they can be different. And so some people have a little bit of a fear of missing out, FOMO thing with that. There does end up being more programming than you can shake a stick at.
Right.
Both official programming, and then they have official, unofficial programming. It's called the Shadow Cruise. And it's events that are put on by the passengers, not the organizers. And it used to be you would just say, I'm going to be here at this time, show up. But it got to be so much that actually the cruise
start scheduling it.
Now organizes it. So you have a room, you have a time, you have AV equipment, things like that. You have access to a piano if you need it, things like that.
That's awesome.
Who's selling
my friend
art?
Cody Wymore is a composer in New York, and he would do a show occasionally in the piano lounge that was just fabulous. So I'm sorry, Jobeth, you said something.
Who's selling art on this cruise?
The art The art showroom is still managed by the crews. It's still the same. I don't even think they do anything special in terms of what they decide to sell for our group. One year there was some like cool superhero stuff in there, and some of us were kind of eyeing it, but they still have the the same old stuff, and it's the same old pitch. One of the funny things is we do kind of encourage, I say we, like the royal we, because I am kind of adjacently associated with, they call themselves the Home Office, THO. They encourage people to take advantage of some of those things because we don't pay for that. Like some of those people are independent contractors. They're on the ship anyway. If we don't, give them our custom, they lose out.
Right.
And we don't like that. One of the things is, Steve takes a ton of pictures on the cruise. He's a whole team of volunteer photographers, but we do encourage people to buy the photos in the gallery from the ship photographers, because again, they're contractors. They don't make any money if nobody buys anything. And he works with that team actually. Like they know him, he knows them. Like they have stuff set up for, like, they do a step and repeat wall for the formal night and things like that. So, it's all very friendly, and we've refined it over the years to try and just make sure everybody gets taken care of. The Joko cruisers have a reputation of being really good customers, good tippers, polite, and
I'm hoping, and I know that the tickets just went on sale for Joko 2024. I don't know if we're going to be able to make that. Fingers crossed that we can.
Yeah. Of course, that might be one of the years I decide not to go. So I'm sorry.
Well, so
I might take a year off.
No, if you then but if we go, then I'm gonna make sure that we are able to go every year. Like once we start, that's gonna be a annual
and there are
thing.
A lot of people who have been going since the very first year, and have been on every cruise. They make it work. So there are still some cabins available for the current cruise. You're getting really close to that window where you won't be able to book anymore, but there are still some cabins.
Right.
So I don't know if you guys.
I check each week.
Might.
I check each week, and then I check our bank account, and I go, okay, those don't match up yet.
Yeah, it is a pricey vacation. It's not a cheap vacation. It's a little more than a comparable all-inclusive cruise would be.
I think the hard part is when I first was looking at it, it was when they were selling out the West Coast, and I'm like, cool, I can drive to port.
Yeah,
I'm good. I don't have to worry about that. Now it'd be like, I have to fly back into the States.
Fly to Florida. And a lot of people are not enjoying transiting through Florida right now. So, and actually there's been a little bit of a kerfuffle, because Florida actually passed I don't know if it's a law or an executive order by the governor or what, but Florida has banned the cruise lines from enacting certain COVID protocols. And so the COVID stuff with the cruise was kind of up in the air for a while.
Right.
Last year they had everybody, masking, testing at the port, all of that stuff. You're no longer allowed to do testing at the port.
Which is stupid.
Yeah.
That's why we're leaving. That's one of the reasons why we're getting the fuck out this country.
Well, Ron DeSantis wants to be president.
I know.
So
and he'll probably he'll definitely make a run for the nominee. As much as I love the people in Florida, I can't Florida.
Yeah.
I'm
sure you've seen the map of like where the majority of people in Florida live and things like that. Like, Florida is like many. I grew up in the South. The South is an easy target for criticism for a lot of things, politics, racism. But the South is a mixed bag, like any place. And the people who are representing Southern states on the national stage aren't always the people in those places.
Right. You're not representative of your constituents. And it's really not.
And there's a lot of disenfranchised folks in Florida. And again, I grew up in Virginia, a state where a lot of folks would like you to think no black people live.
Which is stupid.
That ain't so.
Because we're everywhere.
Yes.
We're everywhere. Everywhere.
We've said more than once on this show that the South is basically its own time zone. It's not hours apart, but decades apart from the rest of the country.
But at the same time,
At the same time,
I've encountered
Right.
some shocking racism and regressive politics from Northerners. They term it. They know how to phrase it differently. They know how to keep the quiet part quiet sometimes.
I try to tell folks, it's everywhere. If you think it's not where you are, it's because you're not looking where you are.
Well, and as a white Southerner, especially someone who it's not super noticeable, but I do have a little bit of an accent, and it comes out more in certain situations. Talking to Jacob, the Louisiana boy, if I talk to Jacob in person, my accent gets real, and you'll know because I'll say real instead of really. I get very Southern, but sometimes people from other parts of the country who are bigots will catch that I'm a white Southerner and then decide, oh, this person is obviously on my side.
You're one of us.
And that's when the mask comes off,
Yeah, the hood gets removed.
Shocking, just shocking. We had an Uber driver here in Vegas who was Middle Eastern, and for a lot of demographic purposes, Middle Eastern folks are often considered white, and many of them consider themselves white.
Yep.
And he was spouting off some white supremacist garbage and talking about whether or not people should be allowed to say the N-word. And I didn't say it because I felt like it would bolster his worldview, but I was like, oh, honey, white people don't think you're white.
Right.
You
may think you're white, but you're not. You're not. You're not one of them. You can, as much as you try to assimilate, you're not one of them. As you know, that's always one of my favorite. And I don't. Again, we don't get too heavy on this podcast. It's always one of my favorite topics to listen to and hear people talk is around the N-word. And a comedian I heard was comparing that to midget, and the little people were saying
John Mulaney. I think
it may have. Yes, I think it was John Mulaney.
If you're comparing the badness of two words and you won't say one of them, that's the worst word.
That's the worst word, right? No one says, "Oh, you can't say the M word," because no one will know what you're talking about. But if you say the N word,
tried to say that boomer was the new N word, and
right?
I was
like, no,
that's a designation y'all gave yourselves,
right? It fits.
Or Karen, I've heard that Karen is the new,
which is dumb. The fact, and again,
I know a lot of women named Karen who are sad that their name
Karen is an earned title. It is not the same.
Yeah, none of it's the same. None of it equates. None of it's equal. But that's another discussion for another podcast.
Well, and if you grow up in a place where that language is used more, I think you're more aware of the differences.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not just catching it from the hip hop artist you just recently listened to on Spotify, it hits a little bit differently.
I had a friend in high school who's had a cousin, from sort of the other side of the blanket, who was a mixed race fella, and I never learned his real name because everybody just called him Coon. So
yeah.
2023, that person's still around, so. Yeah. Maybe he's decided to stop going by that. And
I tell you what's funny. Anytime I run into like a heavy racist, the blatant whatever, there's a part of me that goes, y'all haven't died out yet. Like y'all are still.
Yeah, it's like if a brontosaurus walks down the road. Like it's like holy shit! Like
oh wow,
you're still around.
You're still around, and talking about bringing back the dodo. I'm like, what? How about can we get rid of the clan before we start bringing back old extinct birds? How about get rid of those dodos first? Anywho.
Well, David Duke was not successful in his bid for the Republican nomination, so.
But he was close.
He put a guy in.
But he was close.
And he made it all the way. I'm just going to say.
Yeah.
And 45 made it to the office. But, yeah.
Well, he and David Duke get along great because of all the plastic surgery. So.
They're friends. And the racism. Yeah, the plastic surgery and all the racism. But yeah, well, awesome. Well, Sarah, thank you for coming on and hanging out with us and chatting. I miss you guys already.
Yeah. I really miss Sorry.
What I really
I don't
miss
think it
is
was a good trade-off. We showed up and then you're leaving, and I don't think it was a good. I don't think Vegas is better for that trade. I think Steve and I will contribute nothing.
I don't know. I don't know. You'll add a little bit to it.
Well,
People. I'll tell you right now. People in the Mahjong group love you guys.
well, that's nice.
Yeah,
That's
they're
because
like,
I let them beat me so many times.
that, and I'm pretty
I
sure
did win 2
the
rounds.
cotton
I've won
candy.
2 total rounds of mahjong in my entire life. So,
Yeah, and I'm sure
but no,
the cotton candy helped as well.
yeah, my husband did bring a cotton candy machine and spun fresh cotton candy for people. But actually, my husband Steve, who ICS folks will know as Bat Scoop,
Bat Scoop.
he is we sometimes call him pro-am, photographer. He has been paid for gigs, but it's not his day job.
Right.
But he does have lots of good camera equipment, and we recently bought a drone camera and lots of fancy stuff. He has actually been picking up a couple of little side gigs, photographing bands in
Awesome.
Vegas. And he's not trying to undercut any professional photographers or anything like that, but he doesn't have to charge as much for his time as some of those folks. What he's delivering is not the same. Like, he wants that very
Right.
clear. But if you're a musician or a performer in Vegas and you haven't been able to afford portraits or performance photos, like on stage, he especially, because of his experience with the cruise, he's very good at doing performance photos.
He has some really great pictures of SJ and her band.
Yes, he has taken some really fantastic pictures of SJ, as well as a couple of other bands in the area now. And so that's definitely something, if you're in that position and you're listening to this podcast, or someone, like, definitely reach out. He does have a real job during the day that he has to schedule around, but he'll make it work with you. And now that we have 2 cars again, he can come meet you places.
Awesome
And
sauce.
he likes to play around with interesting photo composition. So if you want dynamic, interesting photos, he's your guy. That's what he wants to do. And he, like I said, he's got the drone. He took a couple drone shots of one of the bands that turned out kind of cool.
Cool deal. Yeah, be sure to send us a link. We'll put it in the description.
I do nothing with that. I've retired as a photography assistant. I will no longer stand around with my hand above my head holding a bounce brush. That doesn't interest me anymore. But
good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, where can the folks find you on the social medias?
So I am on Twitter and Instagram as Speak Boyleese, the word speak, and then BOYLESE. I haven't really been using Insta as much because the app has been kind of shit in the bed lately. But I'm on Twitter. I'm very scattered on Twitter. It's where I just make my brain droppings. I can be political there sometimes. I post a lot of pictures of my bedhead. I am an epic bedhead person. But yeah, I'm there. If I've met you in person or communicated with you on Scoop Group, I do accept Facebook requests. So, don't be weird. I've blocked a lot of scoops on Facebook.
Yeah.
So, don't be that guy. But I'm out there. My life's an open book, and I'm happy I will talk to anyone about anything. Generally,
we definitely have to have you back on the podcast because there's a lot of.
Maybe I'll come back after the cruise and talk about how terribly sunburned I am.
Absolutely, yes. We need cruise updates because I anticipate there being a cruising episode, but we have so much to talk about.
Well, there's a botanic garden in one of the ports that I might want to go visit. And I can tell you about the time later. I can tell you about the time in Mexico where I went to the snake zoo. Right?
Yes.
There's so many little. I love to go to the little interesting stuff, And one of the things is you can find out how actually safe a place is. That's information that you can get.
Right.
And I think a lot of folks and a lot of white folks get scared of countries where everyone is a different color than them.
Everyone's brown. Oh no, everyone's brown. They're gonna steal
everyone's darker than me. I'm freaking out. We were in Grand Cayman, for example, and Grand Cayman is a very safe, very touristy island. The people there are not desperately impoverished, which is
Right.
where you sometimes start to encounter a lack of safety because people are desperate. Everyone there is really friendly, and tourism is the business there. And I remember we went to the turtle farm. There's a sea turtle farm in Grand Cayman, and it's about 1 mile from a place called Hell, which is a rock formation.
Right.
That's really cool looking. And it's about 1 mile, and it's flat. And so we went, we'll walk. There was a bus. People were paying to get on a bus to go 1 mile through just suburban neighborhoods because they were scared, you know.
Right.
And you know, some people can't make that walk, and I get it. Like I have chronic health issues, and there have been days where I would have taken that bus.
Right.
But yeah, we walked through a neighborhood. We saw chickens, and there was a pit bull that was like growling at us because his girlfriend was pregnant, and he was like, "You stay away." And there were people on bicycles, and like everybody was super friendly. We were never in any danger. I did get a little bit sunburned, you know, but it's just one of those things. It's like, it is possible to know exactly what your circumstances are going to be anywhere you travel. Don't
go blind.
Don't be stupid, but don't let fear stop you from experiencing something. I think would be one of my biggest recommendations for people doing any kind of travel is,
Yeah.
Be aware of your surroundings, be smart,
educate,
but don't be afraid if you don't have to be.
Valuable advice for those who have listened all the way to the end.
Definitely be afraid of Big Sexy, though. He's,
and I'm coming. Get ready, world. I'm coming.
He's like the biggest, scariest teddy bear you've ever seen.
Indeed. I always tell folks, I'm a teddy bear, but never forget, that the second part of teddy bear is bear. Anywho, love you guys. Thanks for listening. Again, you can catch us at Big Sexy Nomad at all the spots. bigsexynomad.com to check out the podcast. Hit us up on prankcall.me. Leave us an audio postcard. Yeah, thanks for listening. Appreciate y'all being here.
That's right.
Safe travels.